Oh my god. Sorry, this is the first time I've ever done a live stream. Oh my god, this is so cool. I'm actually doing a thing. I'm growing as a creator. Exciting for me. I am surprisingly nervous about this. I don't know why. Like, also, can anyone in the chat let me know if you can't see or hear me? Because I've literally never streamed before in my life. So, um, so amazing. Okay, you can see and hear me. Okay, so a few days ago, I did like an author event thing at a bookshop, which was really, really cool. And I chatted with Alison Greaves, who's an amazing author. And I wasn't nervous. I was like super chill. This makes me nervous. But if I have fun with this, I can do this all the time. And this could be really, really fun. So for this stream, I'm very, very, very happy to do Q&A stuff. Like we can, I'm going to center this a little bit better. There we go. All the books you can see like just there. Where are they? I can't even do it. Stacked up over here. These books are all just like trash. They're all like terrible books I need to get rid of. So if you wonder what that was. And this is where I film all my videos, and there's my camera behind me. It's a little insight into my life. What was I saying? Why am I here? Oh yeah, so the plan for this stream is twofold. I'm going to read some stories, Edgar Allan Poe stories. I've picked 3, and we'll see how we go as we go through these Poe stories. And it's so weird having like a live chat. Sorry, this if I make streaming like a normal thing, I promise I won't be like this from now on. But this is really fun. But I also wanted to do like Q&A stuff. Like if there's anything you've ever wanted to ask me, because I don't know, now's a chance. I did a Q&A video years and years and years ago when the channel had like 5,000 subs or something. And that was really, really fun. And then ever since then, I'm like, I'm never doing that again. So I'm just going to do like, anytime I stream, just do like, I'm just going to do like an AMA if you want to ask me shit. I also went back and forth on what kind of voice to use when I'm reading my stories. Not my stories, Poe's stories. And I think I'm going to do the man voice. I think I'm going to do like my old voice because it works so well for Edgar Allan Poe. So that's fun. Oh, necklace. So I don't know if anyone knows the author Heather Parry. Heather is, I've got a candle here and it's really, really hot. So I'm just gonna, there you go. Heather's a friend of mine. And one day I went to see her have a chat with Julia Armfield, who wrote Our Wives Under the Sea. And while we were like at the event, I got chatting with Heather afterwards and she was wearing this necklace. And I was like, I want that. And instead of asking her, oh, where did you get the necklace? That's really cool. I just went on Etsy and just Googled or searched for like a crow pendant. And I wear this every single day. My partner has one too. I just searched for it on Etsy and I got 2 of them. It costs like a tenner, I think, maybe less. But I wear this all the time. Yeah, sorry, that's the story of that. I saw Heather wearing it and I was like, give me that. So I just searched for it on Etsy. Genuinely have no idea what the seller was. So, no, she didn't just give it to me. That would be amazing. No, Heather's not that nice. I don't know if anyone's that nice. She is lovely though. She and I live in the same city now, and we haven't actually hung out since I moved here. I've been to some events that she was doing, but anyway, so I've got a plan to read out 3 Edgar Allan Poe stories. And the first one, I'm going to start with The Telltale Heart because like I first read this story like 10 years ago and I was flabbergasted by how good The Telltale Heart is. And Poe's poetry and stories are so much fun to say out loud. Like it's very hard. I don't know if you've read a lot of Poe, anyone? If you've read a lot of Poe, it is so hard to read it in your head. Like you get the urge to say everything out loud as if you're speaking to an audience because he had this magnetic way with words. And a lot of authors of that time used to do that. You know, Dickens famously used to do live readings of his stories. And Poe did as well. So I'm going to do that. So we'll start with the Telltale Heart, and we'll move on to 2 others that I've got planned. And I also might do the Raven as well, because the Raven's my favorite thing in the whole wide world. Buckle up. Wait, hang on. Were there any other questions? Okay, no, let's jump in. Okay, so this is the Telltale Heart, read in my dead man voice. Not dead man voice. Dead. You get it. Okay. The Telltale Heart. I haven't read this in years. Okay. True. Nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous. I had been and am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in the heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object there was none, passion there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. One of his eyes resembled that of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. That's where the movie, no, it was a TV series, got its name from, The Pale Blue Eye. I haven't watched it yet, but it's about Poe. Anyway. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now, this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing, but you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded. With what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. And every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it. Oh, so gently. And then, when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern, all closed, so that no light shone out. And then I thrust in my head. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunning I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening, so far that I could see him as he lay upon his bed. Ha! Would a madman have been so wise as this? And then, when my head was well in the room, I undid the lantern cautiously. Oh, so cautiously, for the hinges creaked. I undid it just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye, and this I did for 7 long nights, every night just at midnight, but I found the eye always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work, for it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone, and inquiring how he had passed the night. So you see, he would have been a very profound old man. Indeed, to suspect that every night just at 12 I looked in upon him while he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own power. of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph. To think that there I was, opening the door, little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly, as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back, but no. His room was as black as pitch, with the thick darkness, for the shutters were closed, fastened, through fear of robbers. And so I knew that he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pushing on it steadily, steadily. I had my head in, and was about to open the lantern when my thumb slipped upon the tin fastening. And the old man sprang up in the bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quiet, still, and said nothing. For a whole hour I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in the bed listening, just as I have done, night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall. Presently I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. It was not a groan of pain or grief, oh no! It was the low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well. Many a night, just at midnight, when all the world slept, it has welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo the terrors that distracted me. I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt and pitied him, although I chuckled at heart. I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise, when he had turned in the bed. His fears had been ever growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He had been saying to himself, "It is nothing but the wind in the chimney. It is a mouse crossing the floor," or "It is merely a cricket which has made a single chirp." Yes, he had been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions. But he had found all in vain, because death, in approaching him, had stalked with his black shadow before him and enveloped the victim. And it was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he neither saw nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within the room. When I had waited a long time, very patiently, without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a very, very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it. You cannot imagine how stealthily, until at length a single dim ray, like the thread of the spider, shot from out the crevice and full upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinctness, all a dull blue with a hideous veil over it, and that chilled the very marrow in my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the ray, as if by instinct, precisely upon the damned spot. And now have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over-acuteness of the senses? Now I say there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well, too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury, as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier into courage. But even yet I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could maintain the ray upon the eye. Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker and louder every instant. The man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, I say, louder every moment. Do you mark me well? I have told you that I am nervous, so I am. And now, at the dead hour of the night, amid the dreadful silence of that old house, so strange a noise as this excited me to uncontrollable terror. Yet, for some minutes longer, I refrained and stood still. But the beating grew louder. I thought the heart must burst. And now an anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leapt into the room. He shrieked once only. In an instant, I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. I then smiled gaily to find the deed so far done. But for many minutes, the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. At length it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand upon the heart and held it there many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more. If still you think me mad, you will think so no longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned, and I worked hastily, but in silence. For all I dismembered the corpse, I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber. I deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the boards so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatever. I had been too wary for that. A tub had caught all. When I had made an end of these labors, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. As the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart. For what had I now to fear? There entered 3 men, who introduced themselves with perfect suavity as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police officer, and they, the officers, had been deputed. Deputed? Is that a verb? To search the premises. I smiled. For what had I to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man I mentioned was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I bade them search well. I led them at length to his chamber. I showed them his treasures, secure, undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room. I desired them here to rest from their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease. They sat And while I answered cheerily, they chattered familiar things, but ere long I felt myself getting pale and wished them gone. My head ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ears, but still they sat and still chattered. The ringing became more distinct. It continued and became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and gained definitiveness until at length I found that the noise was not within my ears. No doubt I grew very pale, but I talked more fluently and with a heightened voice, yet the sound increased, and what could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound, much such a sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard it not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the noise steadily increased. I arose and argued about trifles in a high key and with violent gesticulations, but the noise steadily increased. But why? Why would they not be gone? I paced the floor, to and fro, with heavy strides, as if excited to fury by the observation of the men. But the noise steadily increased. Oh God, what could I do? I foamed, raved, I swore. I swung the chair upon which I had been sitting and grated it upon the boards. But the noise arose over all and continually increased. It grew louder, louder, louder. And still the men chatted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible they heard not? Almighty God, no, no! They heard, they suspected, they knew. They were making a mockery of my horror. This I thought, and this I think. But anything was better than this agony. Anything was more tolerable than this derision. I could bear these hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream or die. And now again, hark, louder, louder, louder! Villains! I shrieked. Dissemble no more. I admit the deed. Tear up the planks. Here, here. It is the beating of his hideous heart. That was fun. Oh, that was fun. Oh my God. Oh my God, that is so good. Wow, that is amazing. Oh my God, Christiana, thank you so much. I forgot about the, the thing. I need to stream more often. This is really fun. Okay, so that final little section that starts with villains is like the most gorgeous finale of any story ever, if that's not like too hyperbolic. But like I did a video that went up yesterday about like the best opening lines in books ever. I asked all my patrons to give me their favorite opening lines from so many books, and I had comments after about great opening lines. That is a great final line to a story. That is so intense. And like reading it in that voice, it's really weird. I have a friend. I don't know. I don't think he'll mind if I talk about this. No, because he didn't tell me this. He was like talking about it on Twitter or something. So I have a friend called Tristan. Tristan is a translator of Japanese into English. He lives in Japan, and he's a trans guy. And Tristan got famous as a translator a good while before he came out, and so he translates under his dead name. And so his dead name is plastered over all the books that he translates. I've got some of them somewhere here. He translated the book of Kiki's Delivery Service, which was originally a series of children's books in Japan. And I think he's translating a whole bunch of them. And so his dead name is plastered over all these books. And he says like, yeah, I don't consider it a dead name. It's like a pen name or whatever. I remember him talking about that on Twitter like years ago. And it really stuck with me as a baby trans at the time, because for me, my dead name is dead, like fully dead. I don't think about it. I don't associate it with me. But my voice, being able to like pull out the old voice is so much fun. I really, really enjoy that. So I'm going to do it again. And I do think I was going to read another story, but I am going to do the Raven, because the Raven is it's so much fun. Yeah, I mean, I did a video, I don't know when it was, like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, about the Raven, like a little essay. It was originally an essay for my Patreon, and then I put it up as a little video essay. And the Raven is on page 777. Why isn't it on 666? Get a different book, a different Poe book, just so maybe it's on 666. Not that it's actually about the devil, but anyway. So this, by the way, is the complete tales and poems of Edgar Allan Poe. But I think that's a lie, because I do think it's the complete tales, but like, I don't think it's all of his poems. But I prefer his stories to his poems in general anyway. Yes, I do. I do have a raven tattoo. Yes, I do. I can't really see this. So it's nice to look at it now, because like I can't see it very well. My friend Josh did this ages ago. It was like 2016. And it's supposed to be like inspired by Edgar Allan Poe and Charles Dickens. So I call him Pokins. You get it? And it goes alongside this oh God, I'm so bad with cameras as a YouTuber. This lantern, it's so hard to show. I literally can't do it. There's a lantern from Bloodborne, which is my favorite video game. So I got the lantern and the rose and Pokins all together. And then this is Sora from Kingdom Hearts, which was done by a different artist a few years before. Her name's Lala. She works in Cardiff. Josh works in Swansea. I used to spend a lot of time in Wales. So let's do the Raven. Yes, Bloodborne. Bloodborne, amazing. I was going to replay Bloodborne like around Halloween, but I literally need it to have an easy mode. I get worse at video games as I get older, and that's the only video game I platinumed on purpose because I was so addicted to it, and it nearly killed me. And now every time I want to replay it, I'm like, why isn't there an easy mode? Because it's just too hard. Yeah, so a book with Bloodborne vibes, I genuinely have thought about writing. This candle is too hot and I don't need it, and it's warming me up. Thank you. So I don't know if you can see the smoke. It smells good though. So yeah, I genuinely would love to write a Bloodborne style book, even though that would just be basically a Lovecraft story, but without the racism. There are Bloodborne comics though, published by Dark Horse, I think. Okay, I'm going to do the Raven. Otherwise, I'll ramble about nothing forever. Okay, yeah. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this and nothing more." Ah, distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore, nameless here for evermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before. So that now to still the beating of my heart I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," I said, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is, I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping, tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, Lenore. This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, Lenore. Merely this, and nothing more. Back into that chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Soon again I heard a tapping, something louder than before. Surely, said I, surely it is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more. Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he. Obeisance? Obeisance. I literally have, so I've read this poem a million times. I've never, ever, ever known what that word is. Can someone Google it? Thank you. Not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady, perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou, I said, art sure no craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Much I marvelled, this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, likely relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird upon his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on that placid bust, spoke only that the word as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther then he uttered, not a feather then he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before, on the morrow he will leave, as my hopes have flown before. And then the bird said, nevermore. Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, doubtless, said I, what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore of never, nevermore. But the raven still beguiling all my sad soul into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim and gamely, ghastly, gaunt and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining, with the lamplight gloated o'er, whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er, she shall press, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim, whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite, respite, and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempest sent or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aidenn it should clasp a sainted maiden, whom the angels named Lenore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked, upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. That was a lot. That was a lot. I know that was a lot. It's okay. We're all friends here, so it's fine. Take a breather. I got a whole bottle of wine for this. Didn't need it. Mostly because the book is really, really, really heavy. This is really heavy. I literally cannot look up. I need two hands to hold it. Very, very heavy thing. Did I buy this for this stream? Mostly. Yeah. Because then I can take it off my taxes. Okay, I can't remember what the other story I was going to read was. I found like a list of like, what are the best Poe stories? And like, obviously it said Telltale Heart was number 1. And then Fall of the House of Usher. And I was like, I'm not doing House of Usher. It was a great Cthulhu. I love doing a good Cthulhu. I like a few years ago, I tried to make a few like silly comedy videos because I was friends with, I don't know if anyone knows the YouTuber Man Carrying Thing. But he and I were like mutuals, like on, social media and stuff. And he was doing BookTube and I was doing BookTube. And then he started making silly skits and sketches and they just absolutely blew up. And now he's got like 1 million followers because he just switched over to like doing silly sketches. I was like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do silly sketches about books and reading and things. I made like 5. And I was going through a really bad breakup at the time and I was really depressed. So I thought, I'll make some funny videos. That'll be funny. Yeah, so I did that and then I stopped. And one of them was about how satisfying it is to close a heavy book. Okay, so we have some suggestions. The Oblong Box, I don't know that one, but it should be in here. The detective stories. Yeah, I was actually thinking about doing the Purloined Letter because I remember liking that one and I can't find it in here, which is so weird because they're supposed to all be in here. I'm not doing House of Usher because it's too long. That story is like Telltale Heart takes a while. It's like 5 pages of this book and House of Usher is like 15. So I wasn't going to do that. But one that was suggested here was the Masque of the Red Death, and I don't recognize that one, but at the same time, it is quite short. Oh, thank you. Yee, thank you. People are so lovely. Really enjoying this. This is great. I'm going to do this all the time. I don't know what kinds of stories I can actually like read out on YouTube without getting in trouble. Like I picked Poe because it's Halloween, but also because they're old. So I don't know if there's like a legal problem with like certain stories. So I think I will do the Masque of Red Death because oh, there's the purloined letter. Oh no, it's like 13 pages. I'm not doing that. I'm trying to pick really short ones because they still take a while to read. Masque of Red Death is 5 pages, so I'm going to do that one. There's a really short one here called The Oval Portrait. Does anyone know that one? Oh no. Okay, Masque of Red Death is good. Okay, I'm going to do that then. Stick to public domain stuff. Oh yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I can read Chuck Tingle stuff on YouTube. I would love to, though. Of all the people I'd love to meet one day, Chuck Tingle is up there. He seems like the loveliest person in the world, even though like no one knows who he actually is. But okay, I'm going to do the Masque of Red Death. Now, I don't know this story very well, so I'm going to try and do like as dramatic a reading as possible. But it might go real bad because what page is that? 250. Oh, no, never mind. Yeah, so, trying to do like a dramatic reading of something I don't actually know very well is going to be kind of weird. But I'm going to try it anyway. So, there are films for Masque of Red Death. I didn't know that. That's really cool. Oh my God, you've met Chuck Tingle. That's so cool. I'm guessing he was wearing that bag over his head that he always wears. Yeah, I've watched like interviews, like I've seen clips of him on like panels and stuff, like I don't know, Comic-Con or whatever. Probably not Comic-Con, I don't know, convention panels, etc. Seems like a lovely, lovely person. His books like really speak to that. Okay, let's do Masque of Red Death. Again, I've probably read this because I have read like all of his stories over the years, but I don't recognize it. Anyway, let's crack on. The Masque of the Red Death. No, I'm gonna have some wine. Also, I don't have wine glasses. I think this is a whiskey glass. I don't know. I'm poor. Donate stuff. I'm joking. That was a joke. Okay, right. Masque of Red Death. The Red Death had long devastated the country. No pestilence had ever been so fatal or so hideous. Blood was its avatar and its seal, the redness and the horror of blood. There were sharp pains and sudden dizziness, and then profuse bleeding at the pores with dissolution. The scarlet stains upon the body, and especially upon the face of the victim, were the pest ban which shut him out from the aid and from the sympathy of his fellow men. And the whole seizure, progress, and termination of the disease were the incidents of half an hour. But the Prince Prospero was happy and dauntless and sagacious. When his dominions were half depopulated, he summoned to his presence 1,000 hale and light-hearted friends from among the knights and dames of his court, and with these retired to the deep seclusion of one of his castellated abbeys. This was an extensive and magnificent structure, the creation of the prince's own eccentric yet august taste. A strong and lofty wall girdled it in. The wall had gates of iron. The courtiers, having entered, brought furnaces and massy hammers and welded the bolts. They resolved to leave means neither of ingress nor egress to the sudden impulses of despair or of frenzy from within. The abbey was amply provisioned. With such precautions, the courtiers might bid defiance to contagion. The external world could take care of itself. In the meantime, it was folly to grieve or to think. The prince had provided all the appliances of pleasure. There were buffoons, there were improvisatori, there were ballet dancers, there were musicians, there was beauty, there was wine. All these and security were within. Without was the Red Death. It was toward the close of the 5th or 6th month of his seclusion, and while the pestilence raged most furiously abroad, that the Prince Prospero entertained his 1,000 friends at a masked ball of the most unusual magnificence. It was a voluptuous scene, that masquerade. But first let me tell of the rooms in which it was held. There were 7, an imperial suite. In many palaces, however, such suites form a long and straight vista, while the folding doors slide back neatly to the walls on either end, so that the view of the whole extent is scarcely impeded. Here, the case was very different, as might have been expected from the Duke's love, or of the bazaar. The apartments were so irregularly disposed that the vision embraced but little more than one at a time. There was a sharp turn at every 20 or 30 yards, and at each turn a novel effect. To the right and left, in the middle of each wall, a tall and narrow Gothic window looked upon the closed corridor which pursued the windings of the suite. These windows were of stained glass whose colour varied in accordance with the prevailing hue of the decorations of the chamber into which it opened. That at the eastern extremity was hung, for example, in blue, and vividly blue were its windows. The second chamber was purple in its ornaments and tapestries, and here the panes were purple. The third was green throughout, and so were the casements. The fourth was furnished and lighted with orange. The fifth with white, the 6th with violet, the 7th apartment was closely shrouded in black velvet tapestries that hung over the ceiling and down the walls, falling in heavy folds upon a carpet of the same material and hue. But in this chamber only, the colour of the windows, failed to correspond with the decorations. The panes here were scarlet, a deep blood colour. Now in no one of the 7 apartments was there any lamp or candelabrum. Amid the profusion of golden ornaments that lay scattered to and fro, or depended from the roof, there was no light of any kind emanating from lamp or candle within the suite of chambers, but in the corridor that followed the suite there stood opposite to each window a heavy tripod bearing a brazier of fire that projected its rays through the tinted glass and so glaringly illuminated the room, and thus were produced a multitude of gaudy and fantastic appearances. But in the western or black chamber, the effect of firelight that streamed upon the dark hanging through the blood-tinted panes was ghastly in the extreme, and produced so wild a look upon the countenances of those who entered, that there were few of the company bold enough to set foot within its precincts at all. It was in this apartment also that there stood against the western wall a gigantic clock of ebony. Its pendulum swung to and fro with a dull, heavy, monotonous clang, and when the minute hand made the circuit of the face and the hour was to be stricken, there came from the brazen lungs of the clock a sound which was clear and loud and deep and exceedingly musical, but of so peculiar a note and emphasis that at each lapse of an hour the musicians of the orchestra were constrained to pause momentarily in their performance, to hearken to the sound, and thus the waltzers performed ceased their evolutions. And there was a brief disconcert of the whole gay company, and while the chimes of the clock yet rang, it was observed that the giddiest grew pale, and the more aged and sedate passed their hands over their brows, as if in confused reverie or meditation. But when the echoes had fully ceased, A light laughter at once pervaded the assembly. The musicians looked at each other and smiled, as if at their own nervousness and folly, and made whispering vows, each to the other, that the next chiming of the clock should produce in them no similar emotion. And then, after the lapse of 60 minutes, which embraced 3,600 seconds of time that flies, there came yet another chiming of the clock. And then, with the same disconcert and tremulousness and meditation as before. But, in spite of these things, it was a gay and magnificent revel. The tastes of the Duke were peculiar. He had a fine eye for colours and effects. He disregarded the decora of mere fashion. His plans were bold and fiery, and his contemptions glowed with barbaric lustre. There are some who would have thought him mad. His followers felt that he was not. It was necessary to hear and see and touch him to be sure that he was not. He had directed in great part the movable embellishment of the seven chambers upon occasion of this great fete, and it was his own guiding taste which had given character to the masquerades. Be sure they were grotesque. There was much glare and glitter and piquancy and phantasm. Much of what had since been seen in Hernani. I have no idea what that is. There was an arabesque figure with unsuited limbs and appointments. There were delirious fancies such as the madman fashions. There were much of the beautiful, much of the wanton, much of the bizarre, something of the terrible, and not a little of that which might have excited disgust. To and fro in the seven chambers there stalked, in fact, a multitude of dreams, and these the dreams writhed in and about, taking hue from the rooms and causing the wild music of the orchestra to seem as the echo of their steps, and anon there strikes the ebony clock, which stands in the hall of the velvet. And then, for a moment, all is silent, and all is silent save the voice of the clock. The dreams are stiff frozen, and as they stand, but the echoes of the chime die away. They have endured but an instant, and a light, half-subdued laughter floats up after them as they depart. And now, again, the music swells, and the dreams live and writhe to and fro more merrily than ever, taking hue from the many-tinted windows through which stream the rays from the tripods. But to the chamber which lies most westward of the seven, there are now none of the maskers who venture, for the night is waning away, and there flows a ruddier light through the blood-coloured panes. And the blackness of the sable drapery appalls, and to him whose foot falls upon the sable carpet, there comes from the near clock of ebony a muffled peal, more solemnly emphatic than any which reaches their ears who indulge in the more remote gaieties of the other apartments. But these other apartments were densely crowded, and in them beat feverishly the heart of life. And the revel went whirlingly on, until at length there commenced the sounding of midnight upon the clock, and then the music ceased, as I have told, and the evolutions of the waltzers were quieted, and there was an uneasy cessation of all things as before. But now there were 12 strokes to be sounded by the bell of the clock, and thus it happened, perhaps that more of thought crept and more of time into the meditations of the thoughtful among those who revelled. And thus, too, it happened perhaps that before the last echoes of the last chime had utterly sunk into silence, there were many individuals in the crowd who had found leisure to become aware of the presence of a masked figure which had arrested the attention of no single individual before. And the rumour of this new presence having spread itself whisperingly around, there arose at length from the whole company a buzz or murmur expressive of disapprobation and surprise, then finally of terror, of horror, and of disgust. In an assembly of phantasms such as I have painted, it may well be supposed that no ordinary appearance could have excited such sensation. In truth, the masquerade license of the night was nearly unlimited. But the figure in question had out-Heroded Herod, and gone beyond the bounds of even the prince's indefinite decorum. There are chords in the hearts of the most reckless which cannot be touched without emotion, even with the utterly lost, to whom life and death are equally jests. There are matters of which no jest can be made. The whole company, indeed, seemed now deeply to feel that in the costume and bearing of the stranger neither wit nor propriety existed. The figure was tall and gaunt and shrouded from head to foot in the habiliments of the grave. The mask which concealed the visage was made so nearly to resemble the countenance of a stiffened corpse that the closer. I was doing so well. It was so dramatic. The closest scrutiny must have had difficulty in detecting the cheat. And yet all this might have been endured, if not approved, by the mad revellers around. But the mummer had gone so far as to assume the type of the Red Death. His vesture was dabbled in blood, and his broad brow, with all the features of the face, was besprinkled with the scarlet horror. When the eyes of Prince Prospero fell upon this spectral image, which, with a slow and solemn movement, as if more fully to sustain its role, stalked to and fro among the waltzers, he was seen to be convulsed in the first moment with a strong shudder either of terror or distaste, but in the next his brow reddened with rage. Who dares, he demanded hoarsely of the courtiers who stood near him, who dares insult us with this blasphemous mockery? Seize him and unmask him, that we may know whom we have to hang at sunrise from the battlements. It was in the eastern or blue chamber in which stood the Prince Prospero as he uttered these words. They rang throughout the 7 rooms, loudly and clearly, for the prince was as bold and robust man, and the music had become hushed at the waving of his hand. It was in the blue room where stood the prince, with a group of pale courtiers by his side. At first, as he spoke, there was a slight rushing movement of this group in the direction of the intruder, who, at the moment, was also near at hand, and now, with deliberate and stately step, made closer approach to the speaker. But from a certain nameless awe with which the mad assumptions of the mummer had inspired the whole party, there were found none who put forth hand to seize him. so that, unimpeded, he passed within a yard of the prince's person, and while the vast assembly, as if with one impulse, shrank from the centres of the rooms to the walls, he made his way uninterrupted, but with the same solemn, measured step which had distinguished him from the first, through the blue chamber to the purple, through the purple to the green, through the green to the orange, through this again to the white, and even thence to the violet, ere a decided movement had been made to arrest him. It was then, however, that the Prince Prospero, maddening with rage and the shame of his own momentary cowardice, rushed hurriedly through the 6 chambers, while none followed him on account of a deadly terror that had seized upon all. He bore aloft a drawn dagger, and had approached in rapid impetuosity to within 3 or 4 feet of the retreating figure, when the latter, having attained the extremity of the velvet apartment, turned suddenly and confronted his pursuer. There was a sharp cry, and the dagger dropped gleaming upon the sable carpet, upon which instantly afterward fell prostrate in death the Prince Prospero. Then, summoning the wild courage of despair, a throng of the revellers at once threw themselves into the black apartment, and seizing the mummer, whose tall figure stood erect and motionless within the shadow of the ebony clock, gasped in unutterable horror at finding the grave cerements and corpse-like masks, which they handled with so violent a rudeness, unattended by any tangible form. And now was acknowledged the presence of the Red Death. He had come like a thief in the night, and one by one dropped the revellers in the blood-bedewed halls of their revel, and died each in the despairing posture of his fall. And the life of the ebony clock went out with that of the last of the gay, and the flames of the tripod expired, and darkness and decay and the Red Death held illimitable dominion over all. Eee, that was fun. Wow. Okay, so I did not remember that one at all, but that is so clever. My hair's awful. Oh my god, that was so clever. That was so creative. That was really, really cool. I totally understand why that has been adapted. That was really, really great. Oh my god, people are saying nice things. Yeah. Thank you all. That was really, really, really cool. Yeah, no, that is your glass. My partner is in this stream right now, and you're right, this is your glass. Sorry. Love you. I don't have anything. I have no idea how people like stream and do other things. Like having a live chat, it's like you're talking, you're reading through the chat and you're replying, etc., etc. If anyone's ever streamed before, it's not easy. And there are people who like it's their whole deal, you know, and they do it while playing video games, etc. I have no idea. I never thought about how hard it was. It's quite something. Okay, so we've been going for exactly an hour, and I wasn't sure how long this would go on for, like whether I would do this for 1 or 2 or somewhere in between. But yeah, it really is a skill. Like, my god. Anyway, so I think what I'll do is let's let's do one more and then we'll stop, because otherwise I'll just keep going. Now, I said I found a list online of different Poe stories, and the other one that was recommended, which apparently is really fun to be read out loud, is the Cask of Amontillado. Apparently this one's really, really fun to say out loud. So I'm really curious about why this one just gets narrated so well. So if I go through the contents and I can find it, let's check how long it is. I think I did actually check before. I swear I did. But here we are, checking again. Okay, yeah, this one's also 5 pages, so that's fine. So, okay. Yay, okay, so it's a fun one. Excellent. Okay. I'm so glad that, like, because I always talk about how big of a fan I am of Edgar Allan Poe. And then basically I've read like Usher and Telltale Heart each like 10 times. Whenever I feel like it, I will pick up one of those 2 stories, as well as some of his poems. And then I've read all of these. I used to have a big hardcover like this one. I got this very recently, but I used to have one that was totally black and it was embossed with gold. And I got that, and I also got the same exact style, probably from the same publisher, of H.P. Lovecraft stories. And I swear, I lugged those 2 hardcover books in my suitcase to Shanghai. Okay, so my partner's in this stream. It is an ongoing joke that I bring up. It's kind of a joke between us that I bring up how, like, I really often bring up the fact that I lived in Shanghai. Like, I've lived in so many different places, and that's the only one I ever talk about, which is kind of funny. But I literally, my suitcase was half full of books, and those were them. And I have a distinct memory of just sitting in my really dingy flat in the middle of Shanghai, reading all of those Poe stories. But that was like 8 years ago. If anyone doesn't know how old I am probably older than I look. That was a little while ago. So anyway, I have read all of these. It was just so long ago. And now people are saying that the Cask of Amontillado is a banger. So let's go out with a bang and read that. It comes after a story called The Island of the Fae, which I'm really curious about because I'm currently reading a fairy porn book. It's really good as well. I'll do a video about it soon. Amontillado is my favorite. It's a banger. Oh my god, yay. Okay, so people love this. Let's fucking go. These days in my videos, I always block out all the swearing to see if like it helps anything. I don't know if I can swear on stream. Anyway, let's fucking go. So this is the Cask of Amontillado. The 1,000 injuries of Fortunato I had borne as best I could. But when he ventured upon insult, I vowed revenge. You, who so well know the nature of my soul, will not suppose, however, that I gave utterance to a threat. At length I would be avenged. This was a point definitively settled, but the very definitiveness with which it was resolved precluded the idea of risk. I must not only punish, but punish with impunity. A wrong is unredressed when retribution overtakes its redresser. It is equally unredressed when the avenger fails to make himself such as to him who has done the wrong. It must be understood that neither by word nor deed had I given Fortunato cause to doubt my goodwill. I continued, as was my wont, to smile in his face, and he did not perceive that my smile now was as the thought of his immolation. He had a weak point, this Fortunato. Although in other regards he was a man to be respected and even feared. He prided himself on his connoisseurship in wine. Few Italians have the true virtuoso spirit. For the most part, their enthusiasm is adopted to suit the time and opportunity to practice imposture upon the British and Austrian millionaires. In painting and gemmery, Fortunato, like his countrymen, was a quack, but in the matter of old wines, he was sincere. In this respect, I did not differ from him materially. I was skillful in the Italian vintages myself, and bought largely whenever I could. It was about dusk, one evening, during the supreme madness of the carnival season, that I encountered my friend. He accosted me with his excessive warmth, for he had been drinking much. The man wore motley. He had on tight-fitting, party-striped dress. His head was surmounted by the conical cap and bells. I was so pleased to see him that I thought I should never have done wringing his hand. I said to him, "My dear Fortunato, you are luckily met. How remarkably well you are looking today. But I have received a pipe of what passes for Amontillado, and I have my doubts." "How?" he said. "Amontillado? A pipe? Impossible! And in the middle of the carnival?" "I have my doubts," I replied. "And I was silly enough to pay the full Amontillado price without consulting you in the matter. You were not to be found, and I was fearful of losing a bargain." "Amontillado! I have my doubts! Amontillado! And I must satisfy them! Amontillado! As you are enraged, I am on my way to Lucchesi. If anyone has a critical turn, it is he. He will tell me, Lucchesi cannot tell Amontillado from sherry. And yet some fools will have it that my taste is a match for your own. Come, let us go. Whither? To your vaults. My friend, no. I will not impose upon your good nature. I perceive you have an engagement. Lucchesi, I have an engagement. I have no engagement. That's such an important difference. Come, my friend, no. It is not the engagement, but the severe cold with which I perceive you are afflicted. The vaults are insufferably damp. They are encrusted with nitre. I don't know what that is. Let us go, nevertheless. The cold is merely nothing. Amontillado, you have been imposed upon. And as for Lucchesi, he cannot distinguish sherry from Amontillado. Thus speaking, Fortunato possessed himself of my arm, putting on a mask of black silk and drawing a roquelaire closely about my person. I suffered him to hurry me to my palazzo. There were no attendants at home. They had absconded to make merry in honor of the time. I had told them that I should not return until morning, and had given them explicit orders not to stir from the house. These orders were sufficient, I well knew, to ensure their immediate disappearance, one and all, as soon as my back was turned. I took from their sconces 2 flambeaux, and giving one to Fortunato, bowed him through several suites of rooms to the archway that led to the vaults. I passed down a long and winding staircase, requesting him to be cautious as he followed. We came at length to the foot of the descent, and stood together on the damp ground of the catacombs of the Montresors. The gait of my friend was unsteady, and the bells upon his cap jingled as he strode. "The pipe?" said he. "It is farther on," said I, "but observe the white webwork which gleams from the cavern walls." He turned towards me, and I looked and looked into my eyes with 2 filmy orbs that distilled the rheum of intoxication. "Nitra?" he asked at length. "Nitra?" I replied. I still don't know. I still don't. I might be saying it wrong. "How long have you had that cough?" He coughs here. It says ugh, 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 like Popeye. I'm not doing that because I'll just end up coughing. My poor friend found it impossible to reply for many minutes. "It is nothing," he said at last. "Come," I said with decision. "We will go back. Your health is precious. You are rich, respected, admired, beloved. You are happy, as once I was. You are a man to be missed. For me, it is no matter. We will go back. You will be ill, and I cannot be responsible. Besides, there is Lucchesi." "Enough!" he said. "The cough is a mere nothing. It will not kill me. I shall not die of a cough." "True, true," I replied. "And indeed, I had no intention of alarming you unnecessarily. But you should use all proper caution. A draught of this medic will defend us from the damps. Here I knocked the neck off a bottle, which I drew from a long row of its fellows that lay upon the mould. Drink, I said, presenting him the wine. He raised it to his lips with a leer. He paused and nodded to me familiarly, while his bells jingled. I drink, he said, to the buried that repose all around us, and I to your long life. He again took my arm, and we proceeded. These vaults, he said, are extensive. The Montresors, I replied, were a great and numerous family. I forget your arms. A huge human foot door in a field azure. The foot crushes a serpent rampant whose fangs are embedded in the heel. And the motto? Nemo me impune lacessit. I don't speak Latin, shockingly. My partner does. They went to a private school. Good, he said. The wine sparkled in his eyes and the bells jingled. My own fancy grew warm with the Medoc. Again, probably saying that wrong as well. Do not know what that is. It's a wine. Never heard of it before. Because this costs £6.50 from Sainsbury's. And it's a Malbec, which I like. I really like Malbec. Anyway. Why did I do that? Oh yeah, we had passed through walls of piled bones, with casks and puncheons intermingling into the inmost recesses of the catacombs. I paused again, and this time I made bold to seize Fortunato by an arm above the elbow. The nitra, I said. See, it increases. It hangs like moss upon the vaults. We are below the river's bed. The drops of moisture trickle among the bones. Come, we will go back ere it is too late. Your cough. It is nothing, he said. Let us go on. But first another draught of the Medoc. I broke and reached him a flagon of de Grave. He emptied it at a breath. His eyes flashed with a fierce light. He laughed and threw the bottle upward with a gesticulation I did not understand. I looked at him in surprise. He repeated the movement, a grotesque one. You do not comprehend, he said. Not I replied. Then you are not of the Brotherhood. How long is this? Oh, yeah. How? You are not of the Masons. Yes, yes, I said. Yes, yes. You? Impossible. A Mason. A Mason, I replied. A sign, he said. It is this, I answered, producing a trowel from beneath the folds of my roquelaire. You jest, he exclaimed, recoiling a few paces. Let us proceed to the Amontillado. Be it so, I said, replacing the tool beneath the cloak, and again offering him my arm. He leaned upon it heavily. We continued our route in search of the Amontillado. We passed through the range of low arches, descended, passed on, and descending again. We arrived at a deep crypt in which the foulness of the air caused our flambeau rather to glow than flame. At the most remote end of the crypt, there appeared another, less spacious. Its walls had been lined with human remains, piled to the vault overhead, in the fashion of the great catacombs of Paris. 3 sides of this interior crypt were still ornamented in this manner. From the 4th, the bones had been thrown down and lay promiscuously upon the earth, forming at one point a mound of some size. Within the wall, thus exposed by the displacing of the bones, we perceived a still interior recess, in depth about 4 feet, in width 3, in height 6 or 7. It seemed to have been constructed for no especial use within itself, but formed merely the interval between two of the colossal supports of the roof and the catacombs, and was backed by one of their circumscribing walls of solid granite. It was in vain that Fortunato, uplifting his dull torch, endeavoured to pry into the depths of the recess. Its termination the feeble light did not enable us to see. "Proceed," I said. "Herein is the Amontillado." "As for Lucchesi, he is an ignoramus," interrupted my friend, as he stepped unsteadily forward, while I followed immediately at his heels. In an instant he had reached the extremity of the niche, and finding his progress arrested by the rock, stood stupidly bewildered. A moment more, and I had fettered him to the granite. In its surface were two iron staples, distant from each other by about 2 feet, horizontally. From one of these depended a short chain, from the other a padlock. Throwing the links about his waist, it was but the work of a few seconds to secure it. He was too much astounded to resist. Withdrawing the key, I stepped back from the recess. "Pass your hand," I said, "over the wall. You cannot help feeling the nitre." "Nitre?" "Indeed, it is very damp. Once more, let me implore you to return." "No? Then I must positively leave you. But I must first render you all the little attentions in my power." "The Amontillado!" ejected my friend, not yet recovered from his astonishment. "True," I replied, "the Amontillado." As I said these words, I busied myself among the pile of bones, of which I had before spoken. Throwing them aside, I soon uncovered a quantity of building stone and mortar. With these materials, and with the aid of my trowel, I began vigorously to wall up the entrance of the niche. I had scarcely laid the first tier of the masonry when I discovered that the intoxication of Fortunato had in great measure worn off. The earliest indication I had of this was a low moaning cry from the depth of the recess. It was not the cry of a drunken man. There was a long and obstinate silence. I laid the second tier, and the third, and the fourth, and then I heard the furious vibrations of the chain. The noise lasted for several minutes, during which, that I might hearken to it with the more satisfaction, I ceased my labours, and sat down upon the bones. When at last the clanking subsided, I resumed the trowel, and finished without interruption the fifth and sixth and seventh tier. The wall was now nearly upon a level with my breast. I again paused, and holding the flambeau over the mason work, threw a few feeble rays upon the figure within. A succession of loud and shrill screams, bursting suddenly from the throat of the chained form, seemed to thrust me violently back. For a brief moment I hesitated. I trembled. Unsheathing my rapier, I began to grope with it about the recess, but the thought of an instant reassured me. I placed my hand upon the solid fabric of the catacombs, and felt satisfied. I reapproached the wall. I replied to the yells of him who clamoured. I re-echoed, I aided, I surpassed them in volume and in strength. I did this, and the clamour grew still. It was now midnight, and my task was drawing to a close. I had completed the 8th and 9th and 10th tier. I had finished a portion of the last and the 11th. There remained but a single stone to be fitted and plastered in. I struggled with its weight. I placed it partially in its destined position. But now there came from out the niche a low laugh that erected the hairs upon my head. It was succeeded by a sad voice, which I had difficulty in recognizing as that of the noble Fortunato. The voice said, "Ha! Ha! Ha! A very good joke indeed, an excellent jest. We will have many a rich laugh about it at the palazzo. Over our wine. The Amontillado, I said. Yes, the Amontillado. But it is not. Is it not getting late? Will not they be awaiting us at the palazzo? The lady, Fortunato, and the rest? Let us be gone. Yes, I said. Let us be gone. For the love of God, Montresor. Yes, I said. For the love of God. But to these words I hearkened in vain for a reply. I grew impatient. I called aloud. Fortunato. No answer. I called again. Fortunato. No answer still. I thrust a torch through the remaining aperture and let it fall within. There came forth in return only a jingling of the bells. My heart grew sick on account of the dampness of the catacombs. I hastened to make an end of my labor. I forced the last stone into position. I plastered it up against the new masonry. I re-erected the old rampart of bones. For the half of a century, no mortal has disturbed them. In pace, retriesque. Fuck! I fucked up the last bloody word. In pace, requiescat. That I actually do know. I do know that one because I know about Catholicism a little bit, and it was in a film. What's that film called? It was about two Irish men who they were, what do you call it? Like hired guns. The Boondock Saints. That's what it was called. My best friend made me watch that a lot at university. Requiescat in pace. Anyway, there you go. That was a weird way to end that one. Don't know if anyone's seen the Boondock Saints. I don't remember it either. So, mercenaries. That's what they're called. They're like two Irish mercenaries. It's not in Bruges. That's a different film. But that's a great film too. Anyway, that was a really fun story. And also, yes, great movie. Yes, Boondock Saints, very good. Is it bad? Okay, maybe it's bad. I don't remember. I was 18 and a boy, so okay. Anyway, so I watched it, I enjoyed it, and over again they say requiescat in pace, rest in peace, innit? I think, yeah. So there you go. I do once enjoyed it, yeah. Okay, argue amongst yourselves. That was really fun. That was great. Now, this was a Halloween stream, which means I'm gonna stop in a sec and say Happy Halloween. And now I'm thinking about what I do next. If I want to do streams like this more often, because it's been really super fun. And I have no idea. I like reading things out, but I have to admit, Q&A. Yeah, I can do a Q&A. Absolutely. I might just do a Q&A stream. But yeah, I want to read out stories more often. This is really, really fun. But I am very conscious of rights and legal stuff. I don't know how it works. So I'm just gonna occasionally just read old stuff. I'll tell you what, actually. Tell you what. I've got some Dickens here. Oh, you know what? No, this is a bit long. I'm glad I didn't do this tonight, but I might do this just for fun. Read The Signalman. This is a Charles Dickens story that I read when I was in high school, when I was doing my GCSEs. My English teacher just read this to us. I can't remember why. I think we studied it. It's a terrifying short story by Charles Dickens, The Signalman. There is also like a really cheaply made film, like a BBC film or something, which really frightened me as well. So if you've never read The Signalman, I can't really, there you go. This thing is fantastic. And I found this randomly at a bookshop. It cost £2. And I just found it like on the till, just sitting there. I was like, oh, brilliant. I remember that from when I was at school. So I don't know, next week or something, I might just read this on a stream because this is a really good horror story. It won't be Halloween anymore, but I'm spooky as hell anyway. So I'm going to do that. And I also have A Christmas Carol. So at Christmas, I always read this at Christmas anyway. Maybe on Christmas Eve, I'll read this entire thing on stream. Or maybe over like 2 or 3 streams or something. We'll see how it goes. But I'll do that. Okay, so Dickens is fine. Poe is fine. I don't know, I'll figure out some other fun stuff to do. Yeah. Short stories from my book. Okay, I did actually think about reading stories from my book. I don't know where it is. I've got one copy here. It's down there. So yeah, I could. I did think about it, but then it felt like a little bit arrogant to like read out stories from my book for Halloween. But yeah, I'll tell you what, I might do that. Maybe I'll do a stream next week or something and I'll read some of my stories. And then after that, I'll do the Signalman, something like that. This is really fun. And like, yeah, it's just, this is great. I'm going to stream way more often. This is really, really cool. So yeah, look forward to more stories. I will read some of mine if that's what you want. Daphne du Maurier. I don't know if like they're old enough because the copyright thing is 100 years. Like as soon as something is 100 years old, it's out of copyright. So I'll have to check that. But du Maurier, I have on my Kindle her like The Birds and Other Stories. Yeah, I don't know. I'll look into it. Anyway, I don't want to think about it now. I'm glad you all enjoyed it. I'm really, really glad that this was fun. I don't use that voice very often anymore, obviously, because it's dysphoric. But I always make an exception when I'm reading stories out loud because it's really fun. But it does hurt. Like literally, I have a bit of a sore throat from doing that. It's way more comfortable to talk like this now, which is great. Right, let's stop it there. Thank you everyone for joining in. This was really, really super duper fun. And yeah, an hour and a half. That's awesome. Okay, happy Halloween. I will do another stream really, really soon, maybe next week. Yeah, Tiny Tales Tuesday. Make a thing of it. All right, I'll let you all know when that happens. Thank you so much for joining and happy Halloween. Bye, 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 bye.